Danny, we close my
Hello.
door.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Soccer here, coming to you from our YouTube channel, Straight from the Training Ground. Jay here with my man Mike D. Mike D, glad you can make it.
Thank you. Glad I can make it as
Sorry.
well.
Yeah, we had a little delay tonight, but no big deal. As always, we're very excited. We got three good topics, as you can see there on the bottom of your screen. So chime in with your comments. We love to hear your feedback and anything along those lines you might have. It's been a good week in soccer. You've been busy. I know you had wrapping up your tournament and some other things, but I'm sure you're still been busy.
I've been crazy busy. Tonight we had tryouts for my club team. So we had about 30, 40 kids come out
Yeah,
for 8 spots, which was awful.
yeah, rough predicament.
Rough predicament. And you know what? Let me tell you, all the kids that if any of the kids are chiming into this, don't ever let a coach tell you you're good enough or not good enough. This is how it is, but it is a dictatorship, and that's just the truth of it, in the
Yeah,
sense of how you want your team formed and what you're looking for. And now that I've been around the block for 14, 15 years, I know what type of player that I'm better at coaching. It doesn't mean you're a bad player. It doesn't mean anything like that. So I just know what I like for my teams to be the most successful. But it's a hard thing, man. It's I wish I could take everybody. I wish I could have a roster of 50, 60 kids and coach them all, but it's just not the reality of it. I mean, it's a
yeah.
really cruel predicament.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, along those lines, you just mentioned your tryouts and teams you're coaching and things like that. So, our topic for the first topic we have is, are formations overrated?
I love this.
Famous quote from the lovely Bill Shankly. That guy's a quote master from Liverpool. Football is a simple game complicated by people who should know better.
Valid.
Frank Warmoth. Now, this is a more recent quote from the German FA, or the DFB, as it's called. It's always about the qualities of the players first, and not about the basic shape and system. And then we got a picture of your boy over there as Latin. I can play in all 11 positions because I'm Zlatan. No, because a good player can play anywhere. So, our formations overrated. I'll hand it over to you first, Mike D.
Okay, let me say. I'll start this way. In America, because we're behind the times in a lot of ways, I think we dictate formations and positions much more than what the IQ of playing the game is expected of them, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah,
think you're still playing soccer at the end of the day, and space is space. And you play the game with how much percentage on the ball? Maybe what, 3% of the
yeah.
time
About I think it's about 3 or 4 minutes out of 90. You have the ball.
you have the ball. So that 95% of the time you're off the ball. And how you dictate space, how you shut down defenders, how you create options is so much more valuable than what you do on the ball. And so, what I've learned as a coach over time is that an instinctual player will fit in almost any system if he's smart enough to be able to play it. So, when you're looking at systems like, oh, I didn't fit there because he played a 4-4-2 or whatever it is, there's a bit of there's a bit of entitlement right now with players that say, "Oh, I'm a CDM and I'm only a CDM,"
Yeah,
or "I'm a striker and I'm only a striker," or "I'm a winger and I'm only a winger." Now, you're limiting yourself and how adaptable you are to a coach. So, from a player's perspective, that's not the way you kind of want to go about it. You want to understand your strengths more than your position, and you need to understand the strengths of your position so you understand where that fits in molds. But there's a lot of CDMs that would be a good target player. There's a lot of wingers that would be a good outside back, and I think there's also a lot of wingers that would be a good striker. Um, there's you got to understand what it takes from a technique and a physical standpoint for those positions, and then you also need to understand that coach's system for you to understand how that formation. Like for instance, I'll say it this way: a 3-5-2. Jay, let me ask you this. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes.
Easily turns into what formation?
Well, it could turn into a lot of things. You mean in attacking when you're defending?
And attacking.
When you're attacking, I mean, it could turn a 3-5-2
Yes.
to a 3-3-4.
Correct. Super easy. Or vice versa, a 4-3-3 with those wingers on the standby pushing on the top line. But you got to understand those spaces. Now, a coach isn't, depending on how many practices you have, depending on what, if you're in college or if you're in high school, if you're in club or whatever it is, it's a hard thing to always coach. But if you understand the space well enough and you understand, if you're going to be a soccer player, let me say this right now, your biggest attribute should be adaptability, being able to adapt and understanding who you're playing against.
Oh, well, look at that.
Boom. Oh, Knuckles, well done. She's spot on. The best players can adapt. The best players can adapt, and but they adapt based on spatial awareness. That's why awareness is so crucial, right? If you got to understand, like if you're an outside winger, let's say, and you're playing against a team that leaves the wings wide open, when you're building in the attack, does that give you more of an opportunity to become narrow earlier? Meaning come more in the midfield, to become more narrow, to create more of a transition suspect, to pull maybe a back from their position up. Because whenever you get a line off kiltered and you start creating avenues and angles, that's how you're breaking down in defense. And that's what you're looking to do. So in your position, what are you doing to off balance the defense on the attack is the best way for you to look at that. And I think we're getting there. I just don't think it's there yet.
Well, I think it comes back to creativity, right? I mean, just those nuances, those things we talk about, not to, go back to street soccer, but pickup games in general. It just comes back to those nuances. A player's just their instincts, I would say. And the only other thing I would add to what you said is I always tell teams that I've coached, I feel like a really good team or a really bad team are the two toughest teams to kind of tell what formation they're playing.
Yeah.
A middle of the road team, they're just going to go exactly where the coach tells them to go, and they're going to just stay there, right? And that's not the way it's meant to be. But a really good team is free flowing. Like you could say at the beginning of the game, hey guys, we're going to play a 3-5-2, but 5 minutes into the game, you got people overlapping, dropping back to defend, you know what I mean? That's the way it's supposed to look, and it comes into that adaptability.
Take that. That's the snippet right there, by the way. Like that's it. Like, exactly right, though. No, you're 100% right, and I've never articulated it that way. So all the coaches that are out there that maybe be listening to this, articulation is like part of our challenge and how we can re-describe things and have it make sense. And Jay, I've never described it that way, but that's exactly it, right?
I do what I can.
No, shut up, Jay. But that's true. And like, so as a coach for me in high school, in the high school system, one of the things that I kind of drool over is that when I watch film, I know exactly what I'm going to get, right? I know the formation. And so I can adjust, to it. But when it's a little bit higher of a level, in high school, sometimes it's a higher level. The first thing I'm looking at is who are my players I'm looking at. And that's a topic that we can bring up later, to be quite honest. Yeah. That when you're analyzing and you are doing your scouting, what are you looking at? For me, I'm looking at the players and how can I neutralize the players that you're going to play through. Let me see this. I want to hear what this has to say.
Eric Douglas, seems like formation depends on what players you have available and are more important on defense to make sure all spaces are marked.
Valid. And so it's like tonight with my tryout, I couldn't tell you what formation I'm going to play this next season because I don't know my personnel yet.
Yeah.
And a good coach is not going to have you play, especially in the youth level. Okay, listen, you might have, Klopp, or you might have, God damn, why can't I remember the guy that coaches Man City right now?
Pep.
I already have a system in place, but he gets to pick and choose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But in a youth development system, you're not picking your system based like that. You're in a youth development system. What you're doing is, how can I make my kid succeed the most and put him in a position where he's going to succeed the most? Like, it's still got to be developmentally friendly.
Yeah, that's part of the challenge, right? Though, is trying to find what fits your group the best.
You know, and so tonight, with that, there were kids that were great tonight that I had to cut, but their strengths were not what I was necessarily looking for, that I already had an abundance of.
Yeah.
So I may have taken kids that might have been not as technically sound, but they had a little bit more hunger. They had a little bit more defensive, maybe awareness that I was looking for. And but that's the game. Like, you got this 120 by 70-yard field that you're trying to cover, and you're trying to teach kids that 95% of the time you're off the ball. And so how are you moving off of it? So now, as I'm becoming a more veteran coach, I'm looking for those kids that know how to communicate. I'm looking for those kids that have intensity regardless of what situation they are in the game, that understand where they are in the game and know how to impact the game. It's not necessarily just when the ball's at your foot, how talented you are. And that's where we're lacking a little bit of development. Because, and I'll say this, we have the athletes. I think we have the athletes. And I think if you look at MLS and you look at certain systems, athletes make up for that because their intensity is like, it's always like that. But when you have an IQ with athleticism, you get to anticipate a little bit faster, and your team gets to play a lot faster. When you have an IQ of an angle, if you have an IQ of how things are breaking down or how things are building.
Yeah. And, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So that's where there's this, we have to allow growth to happen. And I think good coaches need to be able to put themselves in those shoes and teach those type of growths, not just look at the kid that can run a 4.4.
Yeah.
Not just the kid that's mad strong and can knock anyone off the ball, but the kid that understands the angle. Like, that kid is worth investing in. You know what I'm saying? That makes sense.
Soccer IQ, I think, is what, soccer IQ.
It is what I'm saying, but I'm trying to break that down even more, because how often do we say that? And then you got a coach that maybe is, a rookie or just learning the game or whatever it is. Like, for me, all right, let me ask you this, Jay. I'm going to say this shit. You play, were you a natural?
In terms of what?
Understanding the game and physicality.
I wasn't. Physicality? No.
Can we agree on this? Let me do this real quick. Can you agree on this? Can you agree that it was different when we played the game?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In the sense that it was more competitive because the circles were smaller to get to the top. Right? Now that it's more spaced out, is more equal opportunity, which is great. But what we haven't figured out is this for all the players.
Yeah. No, okay. I agree. Yep.
Fair.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it goes back to our question. I think that we both, it sounds like, would agree that the answer that we would say is no, or is that yes, formations are overrated.
My point is this: where you coached it.
Was I coached it?
Yes.
To be creative, or you mean to be rigid?
To understand your movement off the ball and how important it is.
Not until college. I mean, not back in those days. It wasn't until I got to college and I was like, what's this all about?
Right.
Nowadays, younger kids are getting that now because it's a lot better. But yeah, no, I was not until I was in college. Yeah.
But you still probably understood it. There's a reason that you would play college, because there was something that you were seeing to anticipate. You were understanding an angle. You were understanding something that was developing where you were able to see it and be keen in on it. Like, I know that for me, when I look at certain things as a coach, and then I'll say it, and then I'll realize, oh shit, I've never said that out loud. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think it comes back other sports too. You know, I grew up, I played different sports. I played basketball, you know, a lot. So I think there's a lot of
You playing basketball?
those similarities of like, you know, understanding the, you know, I equate soccer to people who aren't familiar with it. There's a lot of similarities between the basic concepts. And sometimes people look at you like you're crazy and you're not. You know what I mean? Being the first defender is the same thing as being in basketball or guarding the ball, right? You know what I mean? And being one pass away and help side defense, it's the same basic principles. There's just more people on the field. But I think those other sports probably helped a lot in terms of what you're talking about.
Well, okay, back to even what you said. Let me poke a hole in what you're saying. You're talking to athletes when you say that. There's a difference between an athlete and a soccer player in a lot of senses, and especially who we coach. Like, for instance, there's a big population of Latino, Hispanic that wouldn't understand that reference whatsoever.
No, correct. Yeah.
You
But
know
you asked me what me, and I'm saying.
what I'm saying, what helped you. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that made it more of a natural transition for you.
Mm.
And that's what that's what I'm saying. And so there's a cultural there's a tactic in there that I think American coaches miss, because most of us, like myself and like you, were probably athletes.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Yep.
So
here we got a friend, Brad Keaton. I always felt it was difficult because I was able to adapt during the game and play at a high level. However, I felt the guys around me didn't have the same adaptability and natural ability as me.
Brad sounds like a coach. I think, that's kind of how I always felt as a player. Like, I always felt like if there were 11 me on the field, we'd win every fucking game. Oh, so I'm sorry. I didn't know if I could say that or not, but I always felt like we could win every game. And
I feel you.
Exactly to that point. You know, I always felt like I saw the game faster. I saw things different. And I don't know what to contribute that to. But as a coach, I've learned how to go boom and nitpick, slow it down, and realize, like, all right, I got to say this to this player, this to that player.
Yeah.
You know, and take away the emotion of frustration with it. And I think that's what makes a good coach.
Our number one fan is back in the building. Eric Evans says, Coach Herbert is definitely a true wordsmith.
Is this true, Jay?
I don't know. I don't know. He must be at home drinking right now very heavily or something. I don't know.
Eric, I like that though. But listen, being a wordsmith in this is so. All right, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Why is being?
You got a lot of questions tonight.
I do. Okay.
I like it.
Relax.
I think we got a great viewership tonight in the audience. Brad, I can relate. My abilities were wasted at times by the bums around me.
What is, is Eric the guy that when the pass was like 5 inches away from him, he would look at the guy and be like, like the guy that made the extra effort to get that pass?
Superstar in his own mind. Yeah.
What, bro? Like it was like 7 inches away. I couldn't get to that ball.
Bad pass.
I hated that guy. Eric, you're not that guy. I love you, Eric. I'm saying
even if he does like the Cubs.
But let me ask you this question. Okay,
yep.
I love questions tonight, and I think it's because I feel like I talk so much. I'm gonna not. I'm trying to get you in this, but why do you think? I want to hear how you say it. Why, as a coach, articulation is so poignant and so important?
I think that communication is a huge part of coaching, because I think that over the years that I've coached, just like what you said, you think it's different being a player than being a coach, because even if you see things one way, I think a lot of it has to do with the position you played, maybe, and so if you grew up and you've been a striker your whole life, it can be difficult as a young coach trying to talk to some kid that's a defender, because they see the game totally different, if they're playing left back than you did as being a striker all the time. But I think more importantly, as a coach, I picked up things along the way, and all coaches do this, right? We steal from other coaches when we hear things that we like. I've picked up things where I may call it one thing and you may call it a different thing, a different term, but we're both talking about the same thing. You know what I mean? Like you and I are talking about the same thing. And yet when you're talking to a kid, it doesn't matter unless it gets through to them or anyone you're coaching, you know. So I think communication is probably the most overlooked part of coaching that there is, in my opinion. Because I think there's tons of people that might know what they're talking about. They know all the right terminology and all these great things. But if you're talking to a younger player and they're not understanding, it doesn't matter, you know, how great, you know, you hear these guys at a U10 team, you know, yelling out the numbers, you know, you're playing the number 9, whatever. The kid doesn't understand. If he does, great. If he doesn't understand what you're talking about, it's just making you sound smart, but it's not communication.
Yes. And let me
bring this back up again. True wordsmith.
So let me say this. So before we get to this question, so to me, what I've learned about being able to articulate why it's so important is efficiency in a lot of ways, because I have to pay attention to attention span.
Yes.
How short of a time, especially like at halftime or before the game, that I have to be able to articulate. And besides just saying tactical awareness and what I'm trying to teach the kids or tell the kids, it's also I got to be able to motivate at the same time. So I have select few words to be able to accomplish both things with a small attention span. And more in today's world with how players are, attention span is this. So you need, and to your point, you need cohesive words that they understand. So you need to be on the same page with how you're saying things. And I know, and I'm sure you know, that we've had numerous coaches that say something that you would describe differently and say it a different way that makes you lost. Yeah. And so you're fixated on what the hell does that mean? And then it takes you to catch up, but you miss maybe a point or two from it. So that understanding, there almost needs to be a coaching in the very beginning of what words mean what, and this is how I use it. For instance, move up and step back means two different things to a different player. And I did not know this. I did not, or get tighter. Someone might refer to it as squeeze, or get wide. Means all those little things where you're just directing means something like get up, get higher.
There's different ways of saying it.
Different ways of saying it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not right. Especially when you have a new kid, like I'm not right. I just don't know what that kid knows. So I had to kind of go over that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
with your terminology, I'll quit.
My terminology and how I say it.
Add this to you real quick. You'll love this. Betsy Budrick, amazing person. Check her out. We did a podcast with her a long time ago. She's a national speaker. She's worked with MLB teams, professional women's basketball, college basketball. Anyways, she has a great job on explaining this. And one of the best things I've ever attended at the National Coaching Convention, the average attention span of today's youth, you ready for this? 8 seconds. 8 seconds. Now, I thought the same thing. I thought 8 seconds. Now, I'm a teacher and a coach, and I'm around kids every day. But if you think about it, she said they're not done. But after 8 seconds, their eyes start to wander. You know what I mean? They start to drift off a little bit. It's crazy. 8 seconds. And another thing I picked up from her that I thought was great that I've tried to use as a coach is she said just what you said. You've got us talking really short, succinct sentences, you know, and literally this short. She said, don't blank, do this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Literally that
right.
Quick, that simple, because anything else beyond that, it starts to get lost in translation. And those are two great things. But check it out. Betsy Budrick, look her up. She's great.
BB. All right.
All right. So moving on to our next selection.
What's Eric Dublas say? That's my brother. We got to make sure we give him attention.
Oh, what did he say? Why does formation mean you can't play fluid? From how I see it, formations help set responsibility. So if one player makes a run, the others know where to cover. No, I would agree. Totally.
All right. So Eric, to your point, so what happens when you're trying to teach kids something, right? sometimes you have to make the specifics black and white. And sometimes that's what hinders the free-flowing spirit of the game or the notion of the game. And so when you give a kid that is used to being coached in American sports, things are meant to be black and white, whereas soccer, it's meant to be what's the best way to say it? It's meant to be
just to give you an idea,
and ingredients for you to add you to become the chef for. So in soccer, yes, exactly. It's a concept. And so it's different than if you're a multi-sport athlete, which most American players are, that they're not used to. That, hey, listen, I'm teaching you how to cook, but you got to be a chef, right? I'm teaching you the difference between these things, but this is a concept that you don't understand, but that also needs to mold with these different concepts. And that's the game. It's not as complex as it sounds. It's you go down to the 4 pillars of the game. All right. And I understand it's 5, but the 4 pillars are, attacking, defending, transitioning from offense to defense, and transitioning from defense to offense. And like in those moments, what am I supposed to do? So you break those concepts down within those 4 pillars. And I forget what the 5th pillar is supposed to be now, but I don't need to overcomplicate it with that. So, but Eric, that's a great question.
Well, it goes back.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
No, that quote, I love that quote. I use it all the time because football is a simple game, and it really is complicated by a lot of other things, from Bill Shankly. I agree with what you said. I think from other kids who play football, basketball, things like that, it's very direct, right? Stand here, run here, set a screen, then go here, then do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And formations in soccer is just an idea. I mean, I've had times with a lot of older kids that I've coached in teams where they'll say, it's not as much about the formation. You say, hey, if this person's here and you go to mark them, then everyone else around you should know what to do. You pick up the nearest man and you go play from there, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
Fluidity is part of the game. So, all right. So moving on here to our next lovely topic, I think here is NCAA Division I roster changes. This is a big change that will be starting next year in all sports. And if we have time, I have an article we can share also that just came out a couple days ago. But a lot of stuff here. I'm not going to read it all, but there's a comment in this article said the only way that women's soccer recruiting will not change drastically is if the NCAA suddenly doesn't have to pay $2.8 billion. So in this agreement that all came from the transfer portal, NIL, all these different things, okay? The NCAA is now forced to pay out each Division I school, I should say, is allowed to pay out $22 million now to their athletes, okay? So in part of that, basically I want to show you this article because I think this is very interesting as well. Just came up the other day on Sports Illustrated. The new NCAA roster limits the death of the walk-on athlete. So how this affects us in the soccer world is that starting next year, men's and women's soccer will be limited to 28 people on their roster. A lot of Division I schools have around 30 to 32. What this means is if a Division I school is paying out the $22 million of money to their athletes across the board, they're going to have to abide by these rules. That means people are already going to be directly cut. So this is going to cause quite a trickle-down situation, because those players are going to then move down to smaller Division I schools, to Division II. Division II is going to move down, and so on and so forth. If you look here, it says that statistically, any typical Division I school will have about 8 different teams on campus that will be cutting 40 or more roster spots, about 7% of all their athletes, student athlete body. This is a quick rundown. It's a great chart of all the different sports and how they will be affected. And if you scroll down here to soccer at the bottom, it's going to be cut to 28, 32 on men's, about 30 on most average women's teams. So, and colleges have already started to eliminate hundreds of Olympic roster spots as a result of new limits. So previously, men's soccer got 19.9 scholarship, or 9.9, I'm sorry, and women's got 14 for a team. And yet this is going to cause a big issue. And I think What's really going to be interesting is to see that there are not going to be any more walk-on opportunities, for a kid that wants to try out and walk on and, possibly make a team. And they're going to be required to be on full scholarships. So I know a couple of college coaches that I've talked to, about this. It's going to have a drastic effect, not just on Division I, but it's going to have a drastic effect on everyone because, like I said, these people are going to be bumped down. If you're literally going to be cut from the team and they'll say we have no spot, and then you're going to get bumped down. So they're going to be looking to transfer in the old transfer portal, which we'll be talking about next, to Division II. Division II people are going to be going down to Division III, and so on and so forth. So it's going to be very crazy. There's a lot of stuff out there. If you're a high school kid or a parent of a high school kid right now, I strongly urge you to look up some of those things online because for the next couple of years, this is really going to affect the recruiting process of any high school soccer players, boys or girls.
So let's recap that with the 8-second kind of adage that I don't even know if that's a word that you just said. So basically what's happening is scholarship opportunities are minimizing. You're not able to offer as much cap on it. And now and the roster spots are going from 32 to 28 for college. Is that correct?
Yes. The scholarship will go up. So they're going to have 28 scholarships.
Pay more dividends in the sports that make more money.
But they're going to limit the roster sizes for Division I. It's going to be a flat, just 28. You can't have any more than that. That's it. So that means every player on a Division I college roster, max of 28 players, will be required to be on a full scholarship. And if they are, then, it depends, I guess, how you look at it. They're going to have more scholarships. That's a good thing. But there's no opportunity to be a walk-on player, and there's no one else beyond that 28. So if you're right now you could be on a Division I college team, and they could have 30 people. It's up to the coach. The coach could have 30 people. They might only take 24 to away games and things like that, but they could have 30 people. Well, if you're number 29 and number 30 right now at a Division I school, you're going to be out next year. The coaches are going to have to cut people basically. And then they're going to, if you're that kid, where are you going to go? Well, you're going to go to the transfer portal and most likely move down to Division II, which is going to cause, the bottom people on a team there to bump down, so on and so forth.
You have to be on a full scholarship to be on D1.
That's what it's saying. Yep. And I can go back to this other article if you want real quick. I just found this. I thought it was just interesting because, like I said, the era of the walk-on athlete is likely nearing its end, particularly in high-end sports like football and basketball. Every FBS football roster will be limited to 105 athletes, which is 23. Cutting 23 from previous. For non-revenue athletes, those are smaller things like golf and things like that. There will be changes for everything. But for example, it says like schools like Auburn, Texas, Stanford will have to fully fund their golf teams. Big time schools that opt into the revenue.
Okay, all right. So here it is. First of all, bullshit. Like, how do you mandate that in a system to where our platforms aren't efficient enough to find the top talent? That means that the systems before college would have to be efficient, meaning we always find the best before college. That's bullshit, especially when it comes to soccer. Like, extremely, wow, what a kick in the nuts.
Yeah, welcome to the NCAA.
I mean, it's crazy. And I think that makes D2 stronger, and that makes D3 stronger to the point to where D1's going to reconsider this in 2 years down the road. Like, this is not forever, because this is such a mistake. This is such a big mistake. You got to let the coach pick, and it can't just be on full rides, because you got to be able to see the kids in a different environment. It's a massive mistake. But what that does do is it lifts D2 and D3, and it takes away credibility from D1, and D1 now becomes the league of the privileged, period.
Well, yeah. Eric Dubas chimes in and says it's time to say goodbye to the NCAA. It's crazy to have such an antiquated organization trying to govern all these scholastic sports.
It's yes, Eric.
Our boy Eric Evans is back. This is driven by the need to pay quarterbacks, wide receivers, and point guards as professional athletes, which will slowly lead to the erosion of the non-revenue programs. Couldn't agree with him more. That's why.
Yes, both Eric, you're spot. It is, man. You're killing youth sports. You're killing like any type of progressional development and opportunity to where if you're not an elitist, you don't have opportunity.
Yeah, it's very. I can tell. I know smaller colleges. I know coaches and programs that I won't say the name, but I know programs who carry 50, 60, even 80 kids on their soccer roster. Not Division I, but I'm talking smaller Division II or NAIA teams, and they carry all these kids on their teams. They have 2 or 3 JV teams. Try to get kids on campus, increase the overall enrollment, all those kind of things. But this is crazy. It's going to be, like I said, it's just going to be a huge change. Falling it's falling right in the path, right, from a couple years ago with all this NIL stuff and the transfer portal, right? The Erics are true wordsmiths. They are the true wordsmiths. You got that right.
The Erics going on.
Oh, Danielle Dublis, she says, on another note, I think trying to get you to calm down a little bit. When should kids realistically start looking at colleges?
So this complicates things as far as where you think it's applicable for the kid to go to school. In my experience, going to college and playing in college is all about networking.
Yep.
And this is what makes this more difficult because it's not about necessarily what team you play for and the competition you play for. It's about how can the coach network, how can the player network that are getting looks. So it's built upon reputation in a lot of ways. And so you're talking about 1% that go and play, or what was it, 7% that go on to play D1. You're making that percentage even smaller. So D1 realistically is almost out of the equation in a lot of these senses. But once you probably hit that 9th grade realm, you probably got to start building a resume to network, would be my suggestion, to where you at least know a roadmap of how you're going to network, and the next 2 years are going to dictate where you network to, if that makes sense, because that freshman to sophomore year are very big jumps. That sophomore to junior year is the storyline. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I would say
17, that 16 to 17, like that's kind of like this the sweet. Like that's the, if you perform well in that.
Oh yeah. That's what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
that's where you're going to get picked up, but you're building a resume until that, to where that's the accolades that you need to get looked at. And then that 16 to 17 is like, that's where you're going to sell, and which is unfair. Let me say that again. It's unfair. It's unrealistic. It's bullshit. But that's the reality of the timing of everything, right? That's just, it's just where the opportunity presents itself the strongest.
My general answer to answer her question would be around sophomores. I think sophomore year is when you need to kind of start the process, start networking, like you said, start getting serious. But I agree. Eric Evans agrees. He agrees. All power to the Erics. A lot of Erics tonight. A lot of Erics, and they're all wordsmiths. They're doing a great job.
I love the fact that the Erics are getting along, and they're both from Chicago,
and they're ganging up on us. Yeah,
I love that. Why don't we do next show? Can we get both the Erics on camera with us?
Oh, that we can make it happen.
We're gonna make that happen. So if Eric and Eric agree, write us a comment, and you're gonna be on the show with us next week.
Special guest.
special guest this week on Sunday Night Soccer. We have
Love
the
it.
Erics.
Oh, everyone will tune in for that. You know that.
And you guys both got to wear a leotard like you're in the WWF.
Yep. All right, next topic, the big one. Here we go. You ready? Is the transfer portal and NIL driving college coaches away? So, over the last roughly 2 years, look at this list of coaches. We're talking legends here, okay, who have left college coaching. Nick Saban, Roy Williams, Coach K from Duke, Jim Boeheim, Anson Dorrance, Kathy Delaney Smith, Harvard women's basketball, Jay Wright, Tony Bennett. Good story there. About 2 weeks ago, he just retired. Jay Martin, Ohio Wesleyan men's soccer, Division III. He is the all-time winningest coach in any division in college soccer. And we've had him on our podcast, by the way. Shout out to Jay Martin. But anyways, it is very interesting, and it goes along with the roster rule that we just talked about. Here we go. It's just breaking news. Eric Evans says ratings will soar as a result.
Is that a yes? I don't know.
That's it. Eric, yep, I'm in. We can do it from a bar. Well,
it can't be loud.
Yeah, I think that means that they're both in.
All right.
But, so I'll say not all of these coaches have went on record to say that is what was their main reason. Some of them have definitely alluded to that. And, I don't know if you saw this the other day, but about 2 weeks ago, Tony Bennett, he's won a national championship, classy guy, great college basketball coach at Virginia.
Singer, yeah.
And a great singer. Yeah. Anyways, he retired right before the season started this year, and very surprising. And one of the things he did say in his press conference that it just was not what he signed up for, when he started coaching. And all these people are older, and obviously, you're thinking, well, they just decided to retire. They got to an older stage of coaching or in their job, and they wanted to retire. But I think there's a lot to be said, and I know a lot of my buddies and friends I talk to, just around sports in general or in the soccer world, it's changed a lot. And especially I think for older people who have been used to doing things a certain way, this stuff of dealing with agents and paying kids. And then another real quick one for you before I turn it over to you, Gino Ariema, the legendary UConn women's basketball coach, I just saw a couple days ago on Twitter, was talking in an interview about the transfer portal. And he said, now you have to recruit the kids that are already on your team, and he's one of the greatest coaches. I mean, we're talking Hall of Fame level college coach. And he said, even once you get people on your team, you have to keep recruiting them because they'll leave at the end of the year. And then there's no kind of ramifications. They'll just transfer somewhere else and they can play right away. So I do think that, I know you got fired up on our last topic, but this is to me, these two things really have to be roped in a little bit. It's really killing college sports to me, in my opinion. But I'll turn it over to you, Mike D.
All right. So I think the scapegoat of I have to recruit kids to stay on my team is bullshit.
Oh.
I think, you have a job to do, and your kids should want to stay at your program. And I think if you give them incentive enough, there's not a reason for them to want to transfer. Now, I think there's unfair advantages of always thinking that it's greener on the other side, and there's poaching rules that need to come into play.
Yeah.
Right now, I think we're at the beginning stages of why that's going to be not as great for your development. The next thing that I'm going to be curious about is how does that hinder development, and how do top prospects not prosper as much because they transferred so much, right? I'd be curious about that statistics coming in. All these things, and so maybe this deters empty promises as much in finding right people. So maybe there's more homework to be done. I think more systems are going to be in place. There should be more in place about what caliber of player you need to have. So it puts more ownership on the coach. That part I actually am in agreement with. So now the coach needs to have a defined system a little bit. And so now each program has a different look to it. That part I kind of like. But what's the difference between professional and scholastic?
Well, I have an answer for you. I'm glad you said that. You know why? Or in my opinion, college now to me, I grew up love college basketball, college football as much as anybody else. I know just because I like soccer. I love basketball. I used to watch, college basketball all the time. But these two things to me have killed that a lot, especially with basketball, because you don't even know who's on a team from one year to the next. And I will say that I agree with the fact that these kids should be getting some money. I've never liked the old rule. I'm an Ohio guy, so I don't know if you remember a long time ago, Jim Tressel, Ohio State football team got in trouble because the old NCAA crazy rules back in the day. They were getting free tattoos. Okay, big deal. All this legal action. They found out they were getting free
tattoos, like on their lower back.
Yeah, probably a lot like yours. Yeah, I think so. But anyway, but
your business, Jay. That was a picture I sent in.
That was in our private chat. Sorry. It's not that kind of show. But it's went from one extreme to the other, where now it's just like anything goes. And I totally agree that, you're a Division I football player, you should be allowed to work at McDonald's like any other college kid and make some money. I totally agree that, whether anyone likes it or not, these schools are making $1 million every weekend when they have a home football game. They just are. Those are the facts. And I understand, if you're a star player and they're selling your jersey, you deserve a little bit of that somehow, but it needs to be controlled a little bit. My other thing with the transfer portal is there has to be some rules on the transfer portal thing, because right now, let's say right now you're coaching a team, you're coaching your high school boys team. Your boys on that team could just put their name in the hat right now, and there's no accountability. They can just say it. They can come back to your team. Doesn't mean they have to leave. They can just say, you can look on there. Oh, wait a minute. And the kid can put their name in the hat to just see if there's anything out there that's a better option for them. You know what I mean? And that's where I think a lot of times you hear, when a college coach leaves, let's say like Mike Krzyzewski recruited you, right? And then he decides to move on to a bigger school, or he decides to retire. I understand that you went there for the coach and you could transfer one time. But this transferring every year, after one time, to me, that should be the limit. You know what I mean? After that, there has to be some kind of a rule. You have to sit out a season. You hear about guys right now in college basketball games, and they're a fifth-year senior, and they're on their third or fourth college. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's a little bit too much. Eric Evans says, due to NIL and the portal, the days of building a program are over. You're hiring mercenaries from year to year. It's free agency with zero restrictions. That's what I was going to tell you, is that the difference to me.
So I feel like everything else, there needs to be a contract in place.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You got me sidetracked with your tramp stamp, but that's what my earlier point was. I was going to say that there is a difference. Even in the NFL, Major League Baseball, right? NBA, you have a contract, though. You know what I mean? If you're on a 3-year contract, you can't just leave. You can hold out, you can sit out.
That's the trade, right? No, yeah. I'm with that. I think, to me, that's exactly how it needs to be. And to Eric's point, the other Eric Dublis, before that, like they're hiring GMs now, is even to do this, who's acting like the agents for the players?
Yeah.
And that's real. Because like for my player, who's the agent for him? And I'm not asking for money. Of course I'm not asking for money. I would never. But I'm his agent. And the fact that I have to go solicitate this kid and I have to do all this.
Yeah.
And now he's going to be in a predicament to where he's got to fight for playing time in the system where he needs to be seen so he can reach that next level. And this all becomes this Rubik's Cube of a game to where everyone's fighting for the networking to where they're going to be seen the most. It's no longer about to what the other Eric's talking about, a program that you were part of, which is crazy to me because I'm a Knicks fan and we're called, the Nova Knicks, because we like the fact that they're from Nova, because we know there's a hard kind of blue collar mentality that comes with this type of player. So a program is defining a player, and now that's going to be stricken from them. And so it is going to be more mercenaries where they're not built through a program, knowing that they're going to be more pro ready, or they're not going to be this coach ready. So you're stripping a lot of identity of what it's going to be to a player from those top programs. But
I agree.
Let me just play devil's advocate. What is the benefit of them being able to transfer consistently?
Well, we have a comment here you might like from Brazilian 2. The system now mimics the rest of the world in sports, with the only difference is there's no contractual repercussions when moving schools. I think business, schools, and athletes will adapt in time. And they go on to say that with anything new, it takes time for things to settle and people to adjust to the trends for the best practices for all parties.
So here's what I think. Programs are actually going to be more defined potentially, because if you don't fit this system, that might become evident early. So you'll transfer. But if you fit that system, you're going to be loyal to it, knowing that if you move on to the next system, this might not work out for you. So you're more willing to adapt to the system. I don't know. But then you got the top talents, the 1%ers that you know and I know that I've coached that might be pure bananas. But those people might be less impactful, right?
Yeah.
So now it's more about being coachable, more about being adaptable to a system, potentially of what could happen. But everything else that you just said is true as well. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate.
No, I got a good quote here from a college coach of mine, a friend of mine, talked about the transfer portal and all these things. It actually makes your job transactional now. It's hard to build meaningful relationships because agencies get involved and unsettle players to move them up. Because people have, like you said, you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, advocating for a high school kid, trying to help him. But as you said, money makes the world go round. So people try to cash in on these things or getting involved. I thought, to me, the most important part of that quote I got from one Carl Nolan, thank you, Carl, is it's hard to build relationships. And I know from him and talking to college coaches that I've talked to about this recently, it takes that aspect away, because it's hard to build relationships when someone's there. Maybe you change the lineup a couple of times, maybe someone's playing time's affected, and all of a sudden they leave. And you're just constantly trying to rebuild those kind of things.
Yeah, but what's false about that with the real world, Jay? Like, what's false about that? Like, let's say you're an all-star in this position, and yes, but you're not as impactful in that position because you're an all-star. Like, I know that I've had left back, for instance, I'm missing a left back, knowing that he could probably be more impactful in a position where he's utilized a little bit more if he's a better player on a lesser team. Like, that's kind of how that works out. And to get to that top level with D1, it is more about being notarized. Like, that's realistically, that's how it is. How can I be seen more? And so when coaches can be selfish in the sense that you fit this system perfectly, even though you might play a lesser role, that necessarily doesn't get that kid to the next level. And that's just American sports. That's American media. That's all that. So to be seen more when there's thousands of people, millions of potential, like that kind of almost at least gives a player some opportunity to be able to adjust to him being seen more, which is ultimately the goal of why these kids are getting scholarships in the first place, right? To reach it after, to be paid for this sport. And so that part I kind of agree with. Go ahead. What is Eric Dubel saying?
He says they all have NIL agents. Look at, at the beginning of the season here, Nevada's quarterback pulled out of the season and blew this year because of NIL. The beginning of the season, the guy quit. I believe it was UNLV or Nevada.
Outside of that shit.
He quit 3 or 4 games in the season because of his NIL deal. And, my thing is, I just think there has to be a happy medium. There has to be some kind of, and I know you're going back to, moving up in the world and how that, but to me, it doesn't translate to why you're in college as an athlete. I shouldn't say that. To me, I feel like it doesn't teach any accountability. I mean, we've all been on teams before. Things aren't, when you alluded to real life, things aren't always going to go your way. every day.
But Jay, that's where I think it's diluted. I'm going to disagree with you there. Who's not getting accountability? The coach or the player?
Everyone. I mean, I think everyone.
That's what I'm saying. Like the player's the one that makes the team in a lot of the ways. So there's I see both sides. Like I know for a coach how selfishly I can speak on the fact that yes, I want that player, but if he's got a better position to be seen, just because I'm this program and I mean this, it's not going to. If he goes to a little bit lesser of a program and be seen, his demand is going to skyrocket.
No, I agree. What I'm saying is I think you should be able to do that once. I transferred. I went one place in college. I played 1 year there, and I transferred.
Yeah, but Jay, you're an anomaly. Jay, you're Jay.
I'm not saying it worked.
I have a podcast now, Jay. Don't compare yourself to the rest of the world.
I'm admitting I did that. I'm saying, but my point is, I don't think that it teaches anyone. I don't think it's good for any sports. I don't think it's good for programs. I don't think it's good for college kids to be able to bounce around unlimited times. That's my stance on it. Unlimited times to me, that's where, like I said.
But that's not the real world anymore, man. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, look at how long people stay at jobs nowadays. It's not the same like I have 30-year tenure anymore.
I agree. But if you bounce around to 5 different jobs in 5 years, what's that 6th person going to probably say?
That's normal nowadays. And the way that you make more money nowadays is you leverage the job that you're at to make more money at the next job. And so you keep kind of bouncing around. And I've seen that statistically in the corporate world. So it's grabbing opportunity. And I think that's like, unless we reverse that societally, this is what kind of coexists with how society is in the real world. So it's not like you're getting a pattern that's not like, oh, I thought it was this way because I had to stay here for 4 years, and then I get to the real world and they're just like, well, you're disposable. Like it's like that's kind of how the real world is, and I that's what I'm saying. It's I don't know.
That's all right, man. We could agree to disagree. That's the name of the whole. That's the name of the game.
All right, let's see what Eric has to say.
Well, he brings up the point about coaches. He says, you want to talk accountability, and this is what people said at first. A coach like at Washington and Michigan, these players signed up to play for a certain coach, and I agree. My stance is, you or I talk to recruit kids. You're a college coach. You get all these people to buy into you and to come to your team. And then all of a sudden, a bigger team comes along and offers you $5 million to coach, and you were making $1 million. And you say, hey, boys, I really appreciate you. I love you guys to death, but at the end of the season, I'm leaving.
But that's okay.
No, I'm not. I'm saying I understand in those situations. I think that if a coach decides to do that, he has the right, like you said, in any job. I think the kids in that situation have the right to transfer. I agree in that situation. I just don't think they should be able to do it like 4 or 5 times in 4 years. You know what I mean? And because how many times is this going to happen? This might happen once in college. This is my opinion. I don't think they should be able to just do it. I know people in smaller schools, I'll tell you, smaller sports like golf, for example. I know for a fact who in golf, they play in the fall and the spring, in college. At the end of the fall season, they go, Coach, I'm out, I'm leaving. And they go to another team. And that spring, they're already playing for another college at a different place for no reason, and it's just my opinion, but I see what you're saying about the real world. It's okay. We can agree to disagree.
Well, it's funny, man. It's like, and honestly, before we had this talk right now, I was on your side, quite honestly. But now that we're talking about it, it's like, the lesson that I kind of agree with is like seizing opportunity. And it also, like, for coaches, like, are you making the most of a situation of your opportunity? And so the ownership now is equal in a lot of ways of, like, as a coach, like, it's not just because you're at fucking Penn State that you're going to stay here anymore. It's not because of the name that I have here that you're going to stay here. Like, I got to be doing my job. And so I think we got to give more credits to kids that are learning in a world where knowledge is a lot more attainable. So hopefully they're learning how to understand opportunities and what opportunities fit more, like, because they can do more research than you and I were privy to.
Yeah.
What's Brazilian 2 is talking about? Because I'm kind of agreeing with Brazilian 2 a lot.
He agrees that programs will adapt and athletes will see that programs provide the launch to the next level or reach their max in the short term. He goes on to say, or they go on to say, it is possible in a few years that the return on investment in NIL deals out there may not be as lucrative, and the money being pumped in is reduced dramatically. So,
yeah, I agree with I agree with him too.
I go back to my first statement. I just think it all needs to be roped in a little bit. I think it's okay that those two things exist and that they've made some changes.
It's most definitely a risk.
Yeah.
But I kind of understand it. Yeah, I agree with that.
A 2-year contractual agreement for college athletes, then the ability to transfer for the
final 2 years. Is that a real thing?
No.
So I agree with Eric. So what if it was like you have a 2-year agreement, and if you decide to go somewhere else, now your scholarship is hindered by 50%. So either that penalizes maybe the other school, to say, hey, you have to pay a year of this kid's contract that we already dedicated ourselves to. So you got to pay someone else's tuition for a year. Like, that would make sense. That's from a business standpoint. But again, I don't think you should limit the options.
No, I think it was a great discussion. A lot of great points. We appreciate all the people on here tonight. Comments. We got a lot of great comments tonight, man. And I thought we, some very important subjects. They're not going away. Definitely at the college sports level for all sports, not just soccer. But it'll be interesting to see how these things continue to evolve, and then what will end up happening. I just, like I said, I kind of feel like from my stance as a coach, I know from other people that it's very frustrating.
Jay, I gotta say this. This is a big moment in our relationship, because I think this is the first time we disagreed.
I thought the tramp stamp was a big moment.
I thought that was hysterical. So you having humor was a positive, but
that's what you need, right?
But this thing it's big, like, and we're still friends. Like, it's crazy.
Oh, absolutely, man. That's what it's all about. So if we had the answers, man, we'll send them to the NCAA. I'll tell you that. But there needs to be some of this, and they need. I think we can agree on the fact there's a lot that they still need to work out for college sports. How about that?
No doubt.
So we appreciate everything.
Great show.
Absolutely. Some of your best work. So
your best work.
Wordsmith, I believe, was the term. Wordsmith. So make sure you check out the Soccer Rebellion online. Make sure you check out our website, the Soccer Neighborhood. A lot of great people out there providing free soccer opportunities for kids all around our country. Join us, email us, message us on Instagram and social media, and make sure you follow us on our new page, Sunday Night Soccer. Compliments of this guy over here. We appreciate it. And until next time, keep doing great things out there in your community for soccer, straight from the training ground.